Are you doing what you want to be doing in your job? Are you following your passion? Or are you an employer trying to identify the talent you need to grow your business? Do you know how to manage people of different ages, backgrounds, and cultures? Well, if you're one of these people, you definitely need to watch Toronto Speaks: Careers, Talent, and Leadership. Welcome to Toronto Speaks: Careers, Talent, and Leadership. I'm Richard Wajs, President of TWC International Executive Search and your host. Tonight we're going to be taking a look at what leading employers are seeking in terms of key talent and what you need to do to be visible to them. We'll also help you ensure that you're following your career passion and also discuss what employers do right and what they do wrong in the talent selection process. We're very fortunate, and I'm delighted to have with us tonight two experts in talent identification, recruitment, and management. Firstly, Joanne Thomsen is the Vice President Talent, leading the HR function at Mars Discovery District. Mars Discovery District provides programs, services, and connections that help high-impact, growth-ready ventures succeed. Mars Discovery District owns and manages the Mars Center. The center is one of the world's largest urban innovation hubs and is home to entrepreneurs, scientists, startups, and multinationals who are forging new collaborations that drive Canada's innovation economy. Joanne's an expert in terms of identifying, recruiting, managing, growing, and retaining talented people of all generational levels. She's been a key figure in driving a culture of innovation and entrepreneurism at Mars. And with us also we have Giselle Kovary, President of Engine People Performance Inc., a training and consultancy which helps clients recruit, retain, and engage high-performing employees with a focus on the different generations. She's the co-author of 2 books and regularly speaks to international audiences. So thank you both so much for coming here today, and I really appreciate your time with us, and I know it's going to be great.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
So, you know, when I think of Mars as an organization, I was there this morning. Fortunately for me.
I didn't see you.
Yeah, I know. We should have done that. Oh well. Anyway, I just think of it just an incredible organization which is doing some pretty amazing things, and I think all of Toronto knows it, and people want to go there. They want to see what it's all about. They want to hear about the innovation and the companies and everything else that's going on. I mean, it's a cool place.
Thank you.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you. I'd be curious to know what your thoughts would be about, since you, Joanne, have personally had quite a bit of experience doing this. What kind of people are the early stage companies looking for? And I think we can have a discussion, Giselle, as well, on what's the difference between the kind of employees that early stage companies are looking for, and what are later stage companies looking for? Are they different? Are they the same? What have you seen?
For sure, startups are looking for agility and adaptability and flexibility. Startups are fast-moving and they're small, and it requires an all-hands-on-deck approach. And so you have to be flexible, and you have to really be able to move and go with the flow.
Okay.
And I think I can speak to that. While most of our clients tend to be larger organizations, the startups that we have spoken to, along with that point, is recognizing that when someone joins a startup, that they're going to have to wear a lot of different hats. Right. And in my own business, when we were recruiting, and we're a growing business, but still a very small business within Canada, it requires that someone be comfortable with working autonomously, not always having all that same direction and structure that they might have from a larger organization.
And also passion. Startups are looking for employees who are passionate about their purpose, what they're there to deliver.
Right. Yeah, so you're looking for the buy-in.
Right.
Someone who actually isn't simply looking for a job. Yeah. They're also looking, they also believe, this story, and it's going to take, they want to help take it to the next level. That's what they're looking for. Yeah, I think I would agree with that. That's the right type of profile. What have you seen in terms of the success of people coming into these types of companies that may come from, a different world, such as a major telecom or a major IT company the size of the Bells or the Open Text or that kind of company, and then they come into your world? Can they do it?
It's a great question, and it's a hard thing to do.
And the CEOs want it a lot, right?
Well,
they're always saying, oh, well, if they have that beautiful resume and they came from Open Text, I mean, they got to be good, or wherever it may be, you know?
The startups are looking, they want to know that the employee is going to be able to work well in the culture. And sometimes if you're from a large company, it's a completely different context. And it's very challenging sometimes to parachute in. So I would say, no, they're not so much looking for talent from the large companies. That's not to say that people can't be successful coming from a large company. It's just a much higher risk hire, I would say, overall.
And I've seen the inverse as well. I mean, I have a client that works in a large telco company now, but had been with startups for a number of years on the West Coast in the US, and then joining this big conglomerate is also a struggle because they feel there's so many more restrictions. Sometimes they feel as if there's shackles put on them. And I remember coming from an entrepreneurial business and joining a very established one, and I used the adage that I felt like I was trying to run a sprint with concrete blocks on my feet. So it's not always easy to transition both ways.
Sure,
right?
sure.
It's all about cultural fit, really.
Right. I think of a particular story. In the early days of the venture business, I was dealing with a particularly venture-backed company, and this person who came from one of the large telcos came over, took the job, and I went to visit her, and it was a very senior job. It was like a senior vice president or whatever. And I said to her, "So how are you finding it in this great startup and in this wonderful technology?" And she said to me, "They expect me to make my own meetings?" I mean, really?
Yes.
I said, yes, exactly.
Good point. You
No,
have
but
your
I'm
own
serious.
coffee. You go from business development to cleaning up the office, making phone calls that you normally wouldn't be making, and that's exactly the point. You have to be able to wear multiple hats.
Yeah.
And frankly, not all people coming from where they've been in specialized roles are interested and willing to do that too.
Right. And by the way, just to finish the story, she left after 6 months and returned to the telco, interestingly.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that. Again, I think that regardless if you're a small organization or if you're looking to join a big conglomerate, it's understanding what's the right fit for you, as you mentioned, Joanne. What are you willing to do? And if you've come from an entrepreneurial business and you have to go in there, great, you might have someone who books your meetings and does some of the admin work for you, but you also may not be as involved, soup to nuts, beginning to end on a project, and that can be a struggle as well. So.
Right. So I guess in your experience, Joanne, now that you've been doing this for quite a while, and not only in Mars and earlier in your career, you've learned a lot, I'm sure, about bringing on talent. What is it that companies need to do to get the right talent besides using wonderful headhunters?
Yes.
What do they need to do? How do they make themselves that wonderful employer, that place to be?
Well, they have to have a strong employer value proposition, and they have to know what it is that differentiates them in the marketplace, and they have to know what it is what's the purpose of the organization that will appeal nowadays to the general talent market. People want to come to work for a place that has purpose, and so they have to be able to articulate that, and they have to build it into their career page and how they're recruiting candidates. And that's a really important piece, both for startups and for any organization today.
Giselle, what have you seen in this?
Absolutely. I mean, we tend to work with large organizations, and they're very concerned about whether or not they can keep, and grow top talent. And we tend to look at it, not in all cases, but in many cases from a generational lens. And so they may say we have had no problems doing that with baby boomers or even Gen Xers, but we do struggle with that issue as it relates to millennials. And so to Joanne's point, it's about the employer brand, but it's also perhaps more important what's the experience they have when they get in. So lots of organizations will go to the market and they will have a wonderful recruiting message, and the reality is that doesn't deliver when they come to work. And younger employees in particular are much less likely to give an organization a long grace period to get that right. They say, you promise this is what I expect. And sometimes managers and leaders in organizations are shocked by that. But what are you doing to make sure that it's an engaging place, that they're feeling valued, that they're contributing, which all employees want. Not just younger employees. Everyone wants that. But it is a grace period that in particular millennials and some Gen Xers are going to give the organization.
And organizations need to be building a talent community, so they need to be engaging with talent all the time. scouting for talent in their communities, sending out information, and so that when they're ready to make the hire, they've got a broader pool to draw from.
So is that mostly an online activity, or is it, how else do you do it?
I think it's online. I think mostly it's online these days, yes.
Okay. And let's take it from the other perspective. So, you know, I'm 6 years into the workforce, let's say. I've come out of university, perhaps. How do I make myself as a viable and interesting candidate for the employer? What do I have to do?
I'm not sure what you find, Joanne, at Mars, but I certainly find in the organizations that we partner with is that everyone, of course, is looking for someone that has the functional skills, but that's really the baseline. Whether you have your degree and the experience, if you're an engineer, if you are a business graduate, whatever it may be. Right. But it's much less important what the functional skill is, and they're putting greater emphasis on those soft skills. So do you have the communication skills that is going to effectively allow you to engage with colleagues and customers? Are you going to be able to integrate well into the team? Again, that cultural fit. What are your expectations? Do you bring that passion or that engagement? Will you live our corporate values? Do those align with what's important to you? Again, in particular, younger employees are saying to us all the time, we want to work for an employer that has a great employer brand. More importantly, that they're changing the world, that they're doing a great thing. So if people don't feel that and they join, then what's the risk if that doesn't happen? So they're looking more broadly, I think, on the resume. Yes, check, you've got the education. Yes, you might have the experience, but what are the other things you're going to bring that's that sticky sort of piece that binds us together as a team?
Yes, the values piece is really critical. Understanding from an employment perspective, an employer perspective, what is it that's important to us and what's important to the prospective candidate, so that there isn't disappointment or surprise as the relationship unfolds.
Right. Okay. So how have you seen that the candidate world are making themselves visible to you and to Mars people? How are they doing that?
Well, certainly they reach out a lot through LinkedIn. I'm delighted about that. I think it's wonderful.
A little overwhelmed.
Yes, sometimes it is. And though it's important that we also respond and we notice and we see that these, and what their interest is. So they reach out to us in multiple ways. We have, at Mars, we've got Snapchat accounts, we've got Twitter, we've got Instagram. We're connecting with our talent in every way, and they're connecting with us.
This is a progressive employer.
Well, we have a LinkedIn career page as well, where we are continuously posting all kinds of opportunities in the startup ecosystem, both at Mars and in the Mars Center, where there's 200 other organizations. So it's an active site, it's an active place for people to look.
That's great.
Yeah.
And as you, I guess, when you're looking for talent, what are you seeing today in terms of leadership? And that's obviously a very broad term, leadership. It means a lot of things.
It does.
But what is it, has anything that you've picked up, either of you picked up over the last few years, shall we say, 5 years, that is defining today's leaders? What is a good leader today?
I'm definitely seeing a shift. And certainly finding over the last 14 years that we've been doing this work with really Fortune 500 companies, that there's been, again, sort of mirroring what I mentioned as it relates to the candidates that are coming in. They're asking for leaders that are much more focused on the people side of the business. They're saying you need to be that person who can coach, who can mentor, who can provide feedback, who can tap into what motivates individuals. Are you able to have an engaging team? If you drive engagement, we know the numbers show that it will translate into higher performance and productivity. So what's the business case for that? It's less about that leader who comes in and sort of pounds their fist and says, you're going to get this done by Friday at 5, to a we conversation. How are we going to do this? What's the team going to do? Asking versus telling, like all of the pieces. So we have found that there's been a huge emphasis on that in leadership training. And in fairness, a lot of leaders haven't been trained on how to do that. They've been hired because they're great functional experts. They get promoted because of that. They reach a senior level position or a mid-level position in the organization. They look around, they have a whole team that they have to manage, and they say to me, I don't even really like people. Right?
That's true. And so to build on what Giselle is saying, gone are the command and control days of leadership. There are still leaders who are that style, and it just doesn't work. And gone are the days where the leader holds all the knowledge. That is a massive change for leaders today. It's shared knowledge. So the job of the leader is to figure out, how do we leverage that information and knowledge, and how do we collaborate, as Giselle said, and influence in a completely new and different way.
And delegation, right? Delegation and empowering people with that knowledge. And again, when we think about it even from a generational perspective, baby boomers went into the work environment and traditionalists had all the information. They held it, and it was on that need to know basis, remember? You don't need to know this, so we won't let you, in on the conversation.
Right.
And then slowly and more slowly, information has been more broadly shared. And so when you think about the world of social media, the reality is that there is no hierarchy in social media. If the CEO tweets something out and an employee tweets something out, it has equal bearing. And so what does that look like now when people have access to information all the time? And younger employees are saying it's not having the information that makes you powerful, it's what you do with the information that makes you.
That's right, and employees generally, especially millennials, are less deferential to leadership, positional power, if you will, definitely. They're not afraid to speak up and say, you know what, I don't agree, and they have their own views. So organizations that want to be successful have to be able to tap into those views and opinions.
And actively solicit them, right?
Absolutely, and do it just in time.
Yeah.
And so, and the other thing to add on that is that today it's very important to still have highly emotionally intelligent leaders, and of course that just never, ever, ever stops being front and center. And of course, most importantly, that you're self-aware, that you understand how you show up in the workplace, how you show up with others, what your impact is. That just continues to be, I see the challenges of that every day in the workplace and with leaders, and being able to be open to feedback and actively seeking that out is just a critical success factor for leaders and organizations today.
I mean, listening to the two of you on this, I want to work with you. I mean, seriously, I deal with these types of situations every day. Whether it's a CEO or a senior management role, and it's just amazing the lack of focus on the very points you were bringing up that happen at the board level, happens in senior management, hiring managers who don't realize that just because the person succeeded somewhere else, it doesn't mean they're going to succeed here. And at the same time, how have they done enough of an examination about self-awareness? I think that's of huge value, and I think you've picked up exactly where I'd love all organizations to be. Focused on those types of people and looking for those types of skill sets and emotional intelligence and awareness. So that's great.
Well, and again, just to sort of wrap up that comment, I think is. We now have shifted, and we've been talking about this for years, right? But we've shifted to one with knowledge workers. Yeah. And so most organizations today are dependent upon their people to be successful. It's not the machines that they own or the technology. It's the people that leverage that, use that, engage with it. And so organizations that don't have that people focus are the ones that suffer.
Right.
And they will.
Yeah. We talk about hiring and when sometimes we do it right and sometimes we don't do it right. And I think that one of the things that comes into play sometimes is that when you've met that person and within the first 5 minutes, you've judged them. And that's a mistake that we see many employers make. They don't give the person enough of a chance. What is it that employers can do to help reduce or avoid entirely personal bias? Can it be avoided entirely, or what do you do with it?
I would say it can't be avoided. It's a human condition to be biased, and a lot of us don't even realize how biased we are. And actually, we had David Rock at Mars recently, who's a director at the Neuro Leadership Institute, and he said that we basically judge people instantly when we meet them, and we decide, are you in my group or are you out of my group? And it's a split-second decision, and that's what's happening when we're interviewing people. And if we're not consciously managing those biases or aware of what our biases are, that's when we start getting into some of the similarity biases and all of the other issues we know that exist in recruitment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think that it's a touchy subject because we all have biases. There are lots of experts though that can help with that.
Yeah.
I mean, we work with our clients to say, how can you understand it better from a generational perspective? There's lots of funny stories around the way in which recruiters or managers maybe slipped up and made a judgment about a younger person or a more experienced person. We don't say older, but more experienced in age. So how are we aware of that? But there are experts who help around uncovering that bias. The point is we have to do the work to understand it and be as conscious as we possibly can about the biases that we bring. But I think we all walk with that lens.
Yeah.
Absolutely. One of the other things that will reduce the bias is to have multiple people interviewing the same candidate, whether it's together or separate, and solicit the feedback and get all the different perspectives of the candidate and be really open to exploring and uncovering all the different findings, if you will, of the conversation and the person.
No, that's great. Great point. A lot of people, even before meeting the person, get biases. I can't tell you how many times I'm, dealing with a client and they look at the person's career history and they say, oh, he was at company ABC. Well, they have a bad culture, so he can't possibly be a good candidate. And it's amazing how you have to challenge this type of thinking. If you're serving a client, you must challenge that because everybody, you never really have the full picture until you really spend some real quality time with that individual. And as you say, another great way of doing it is bringing in others to help, validate your thinking or change it.
I think we need to challenge ourselves, right? We have to challenge ourselves when I'm interviewing to not just look for the people that mirror back our language, our values, the things. We have to, in fact, look for the diversity in the team and that the person will be a great contributor team because of their uniqueness, because of the diversity they bring, not despite it. And often people say, well, I don't know about that guy or girl. I don't feel like click with them. Well, question, why is that? Because of course it's easy to hang out with people and talk to people that are similar to ourselves. We all inherently like that. So can we push ourselves as hiring managers, those who are doing interviewing, to say, okay, what was that about the person that maybe I didn't click with initially? But does that mean that that person isn't a good fit for the role? Not necessarily. It could be a great fit.
And to build on that, find what the commonalities are with the people that are different. That's another way to approach that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And sorry, just on that still, biases in organizations throughout, and so we need to be thinking about bias outside of even the candidate recruiting process, but also just in the way that we operate as teams within the organization and just how we deliver our services. So it's a great question to be asking in many different ways within the organization. How are we biased? What do we need to be aware of?
Yeah, no, it's critical for hiring, for good hiring.
And it's tied then to the diversity and inclusion, should be tied to the diversity and inclusion strategies internally.
So, talking to the candidate market again, how can they best network? A lot of, I get this question every day, 5 times, 10 times a day, who do I need to know, who do I need to talk to? And I have a bias about it, but I'm aware of my bias at least, so that's important. But I'm curious to know what you guys think about where should they be looking? Who do they need to know in order to move to that next career step?
Well, I would suggest that the most important thing is the mindset and the energy that candidates are bringing to the networking process. So I like to think about having people have a mindset of an explorer or an adventurer where they can be curious and have fun with the process and uncover interesting things as they go through the process of meeting new people and networking in general. And so it's all about mindset of because networking for many is not fun. So how can you think about a time in your life when you were having fun? What were you doing and what was your mindset? And tapping into that mindset is the best approach to networking. Then it's not such a burdensome thing. It can be fun, and how can I
Right.
explore, and
Absolutely.
what next adventure will I find with what next employer?
Yeah,
And
every relationship has value. It's there are degrees of the value, obviously, but I agree completely with that.
And I think that, that's the way I've had a chance to meet Joanne, and also sometimes gain a friend out of it. Networking is not something actually that I enjoy doing. It's a little bit out of my comfort zone. And people say, what do you mean? You love talking to people. I do, but when I'm done, I don't want to go to network. I find it an exhausting process, and a lot of people do. And so we have to push ourselves, and I love that sort of explore and curiosity. And when I looked at the approach to say, how can I just open my network to people, then it is the curiosity to say, hey, let's have coffee. Tell me about what you do. Why do you love your job? Why is it so exciting? What could I glean from this conversation? It's not going into every conversation saying, I need to get a new job.
Right.
It's saying, how can I expand the people in my network or connect with connectors? Because everybody knows someone who's a great connector. They're that hub, and they know everybody, and they say, oh, you should talk to so-and-so and so-and-so. Well, I now make sure that I pay attention to those folks, and I say, hey, you know what, Richard, I wanted to chat with somebody maybe in this industry or this sector.
Right.
Could you help me connect me? And it may not be with the organization I want to work with. It may not be in the department. It may not be the role, but it's still a good place to start.
It's about focused networking, in my view, and you feel free to shoot me down. But in my view, they have to be. A lot of people go and they say, "Well, I'll attend a charity event. I'll go to this. I'll go to that." It's not. That's not the way to do it. In my view, is not saying don't go to charity events. Of course, do that. But I'm saying that I think they need to be focused, and if they're going to be, they want to work in an engineering firm, well, attend events of the Engineering Society, go to those things, and identify who your most likely boss is going to be, your superior at that company, and somehow you've got to get a coffee, hopefully, with that person at some point, so they know you're alive, you're on the radar, and you may not be right today, but you may be right in 3 months or 6 months or whatever, but they have to know you. So, well, unfortunately, that's just about all the time we're going to have today. And so I'm really sorry. This has been great. And, just like, we know each other. And when we've talked before, we could spend a week talking about this stuff. I wanted to thank our outstanding guests, Joanne Thomsen and Giselle Kovary, for being with us and for their great insights. I want to thank you, our viewers, for allowing us into your living rooms, and hope that we brought you some good food for thought in relation to your career in hiring. And I hope that you always have the opportunity in life and your career to follow your passion, and look forward to seeing you next time on Toronto Speaks Career, Talent, and Leadership. So bye for now.